Welcome back to Discovering Discovery, special edition episode. If I cannot stumble across my own lines, this week's selection comes from Mr. Greg Payton. Greg, what episode have you brought for us?
This episode is a special episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
We did this part in the episode, though.
But you didn't do the intro.
Yeah, we did.
No, it wasn't.
We introed the episode and you said the title of it, and it's just going to be repetitive now.
It wasn't as clean as this. Yep, the episode was.
It's not
Season
clean anymore,
7,
Greg.
Episode 8.
It's dirty.
The Siege of AR558. That's a great one. Thank you, Meagan.
Spoiler warnings, of course,
tried.
for this episode, and also for Trials and Tribulations and other things that I believe we discussed later on in the
And
episode.
all the spoilers for all the episodes that keep coming up over and over and over again.
You Chevy Chase fans out there will have
Hops
a nice
and Robertsons.
Easter egg for your asses.
It's a great movie. It's a lot of fun.
We drop a lot of Easter eggs, so keep a listen for that.
But I think we'll just get right into it. We had a lot of great things to discuss overall about this episode, and also Megan's growing frustration with our grim dark fascination.
Yeah.
She hates us.
It's not true.
She just hates grimdark.
I think you guys should be a little bit happier. You know.
I showed a happy episode of Enterprise last time around.
I mean, ish.
It's still happy.
Ish.
This episode starts off funny.
Yeah.
I mean, it starts off hilarious, actually.
I'm going to show a happy episode about a monastery getting destroyed. It'll be great.
Hey, you had Shran in it, and Shran is just amazing.
True.
Good old Jeffrey Combs.
Yep.
Well, he's not in this episode, but we'll go ahead and hit
You can't warp out.
Yeah, I'm
We're
going to
staying
warp
on
9.
a planet.
Cisco's about to rifle butt you. Warp 9 right now.
Welcome back to Discovering Discovery. My name is Megan.
This is John Quick.
And this is Greg Payton.
And yes, this week we watched for the special edition another episode of Star Trek DS9. This brought to us by Greg Payton. Greg, you want to talk us through this title of this episode and kind of what it's all about?
Sure. This episode is in the season 7. It is the Siege of AR558, which is a starbase that is currently desperately being held during the Dominion War. This is the final season of Deep Space Nine. So if you are already familiar with how grim dark DS9 has been, this is the last season, episode 8. So
And if you haven't watched it yet, spoilers.
yeah, this is about as dark as you're going to get. I think it gets a little bit darker than this. But yeah, it's pretty dark, and it goes to some dark places, and you get a little more insight as to what it feels like to be the captain who's living up on high, and when they have to kind of get down into the muck and really see how ugly warfare is.
Yeah, there's a lot of like the feelings of World War I troops or any one of the World War troops, just like, well, we're stationed here, we're holding this, they're constantly attacking us. Why are we holding this? Oh yeah, there's this thing. Is this thing important? We think so.
We hope so.
Maybe. Possibly.
So it's, it was as they say when they beam down to the base, like it's like, who's in charge here? It's like, me. Who are you? My name is Lieutenant. So it like automatically a lieutenant is in charge, which means a lot of people have died, which is, we find out, yes, that's true. They started in 150 and they were now down to 48. So that's
Which is terrifying.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the initial rotation was only supposed to be 90 days. They've been there for 5 months.
So it was a very stressful situation, as you can note out here, and this is in the most contested zone of the war, the Chintaka system, which it gets brought up a lot. It was this major staging ground for either force. It was is basically their Flanders field. It was their Flanders field or their I'm trying to think of some of the other
Battle of the Bulge.
Battle of the Bulge.
Thing, yeah.
It's just like where it was just like neither side wanted to give this ground because holding this ground would have a significant advantage to the other side, but because they were constantly murdering each other over this one like piece of territory, it just became like, well, is it worth it? Like, okay, we take it, and then we constantly defend it, and then we lose it, and then we get it back, and it's just like this constant yo-yo game where it's just like, well, no one's actually gaining any ground, but there's a lot of dead people.
I mean, at that point, it's interesting because at that point, this episode even sets up the argument for using holograms for warfare in this kind of regard.
There's a lot of interesting tropes that they kind of squeeze into this
one.
You've got Quark's nephew, who's kind of like this, green optimistic Starfleet.
He's like the young gung ho soldier that really wants to prove himself.
He's a really
admirable
spry
of the
ensign.
people that have been there for a long time. You've got him. You've got Quark, he shouldn't really be there, honestly, but he's been sent out, and so he's kind of this, outside observer.
Basically, Quark ends up being us, the audience, more or less.
And then you've got the battle-hardened soldier. You've got the soldier who's kind of lost it, who's been there for too long. You've got Cisco, who thinks he's this, like, big bad captain, and then he's like, oh, I might not be as amazing as I think I am. This sucks. This is awful.
You're only as big and bad as your space station and your uber badass engine with guns.
And like, what are you when you lose everything? So you have a lot of that. We've got a lot of little character bits here. You get to know a lot of the, the one-off characters in this one.
Just enough to care about them before they die.
And, testament to the writing, because I can think of other shows where you know people for multiple episodes and you really don't care about them at all. So the fact that we care a lot about somebody who dies in one episode.
The fact that I can remember Lieutenant Commander Larkin.
Yeah.
And Vargas. Special shout out to...
What was the name of that one person on the Bridge of Discovery again that died?
I don't... Are we talking about no Mohawk Dreads girl lived, then there was Dreadlock's communication guy, then there was Cyberpunk alien girl, there was random other white dude who wasn't Captain Lorca.
Exactly.
Once again, special shout out to Raymond Cruz, who played Vargas in this episode, who you may have seen in Breaking Bad if you watch that show. He was Tuco Salamanca, and he was also in Training Day, and he was also in Major Crimes.
He was the one that was losing his mind.
Yeah. Essentially, this guy's been around for a very long time, so shout out to Raymond Cruz.
He was basically, like, never mind.
He was the guy who was like, he had PTSD, but he was like holding himself together with duct tape.
Almost quite literally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it was a great episode because, I mean, if you look at it, it definitely looked at art imitating life, because, at this time in the U.S. anyways, there were still, foreign combatants overseas. There were still wars being fought overseas that in many ways were never a part of the prime time nightly news first run, because there was a brief time where, even though there were troops overseas, this was before 9/11. This was before, like Al Qaeda and ISIS and all the other stuff. So there was like a little dearth period where, in general, you weren't really hearing about soldiers at war and what they were going through. So this was sort of a reflection of, to say, hey, you may not see this from day to day, you being Starfleet, you being the captain and you're Defiant, you being Quark, just at a distance making your profits. But there are people that are on the front lines having to hold the fort for a communications relay.
I do have to say, though, I love that the rules of acquisition apply to literally everything. Everything. There's a rule for everything.
It's like, you must keep a distance from the battlefield. I mean, if anything, Quark represents today's Koch brothers, Halliburton, lots of great parallels here.
Yeah, people that profit from the war but don't want to get anywhere near it. Not that Quarker, I don't even know if how much the Ferengi Alliance is really making off of the war, though. You know, I mean, Zek sends him there for economic opportunities, which I'm willing to bet is like the Ferengi Alliance is selling a lot, most likely to the Klingons, maybe the Romulans at this point, because I think this is after the episode The Pale Moonlight, and also the Federation. I don't think they're double dealing to the Cardassians and the Jem'Hadar, because that just, well, maybe they might be, you know, just considering like what, you know, Quark was talking from the Ferengi perspective, and basically it said that like if the Ferengi were the ones in charge of all of this, there wouldn't have been a war because they would have hammered out a peace agreement between them and the Dominion, which I think is, which Nog calls them on. It's like it's a lot more complicated than that, and I think Nog is right, but I also think that Quark isn't necessarily wrong. The Federation backed itself into this corner, and now they're in a situation where the only thing they can do is fight.
Yep.
It's either fight or submit to Dominion control,
which will not happen.
Yeah, which will not happen at all. So, you know, any way you go, it's, you know, it's all a bad situation, and could the Federation have worked out some sort of agreement with the Dominion? I'm not so sure on that. I do know that they definitely could have done something to prevent the Cardassian Union from becoming a basically protectorate state of the Dominion. There was a lot of things that Starfleet and the Federation could have done to prevent this war.
Right.
But you know, none of those actions were taken, and now everyone's in this like, well, we're in this like inevitable situation. It's like, yeah, you're in this inevitable situation because everybody almost took a concerted effort to make it one.
Essentially.
Yeah, it's kind of like the effort that you guys are taking to pick the most depressing episodes ever.
Listen, some of the best episodes of DS9, like they deal with this really dark stuff.
Great episode?
And they deal with it well.
Okay, yes. What is a great episode?
The one where they go back in time.
Trials and Tribulations?
Yeah.
Yes, that's an amazing episode.
It's a great episode.
It was on my list. It was on my list of picks. I was actually weighing. It was this episode that we saw. This episode that we just saw. It was the one where O'Brien is imprisoned in his mind for 20 years. It was an episode featuring Section 31, and it was Trials and Tribulations.
You know, here's the thing. I'm all for painting parallels and, you know, opposing viewpoints of Discovery, because that's kind of one of the reasons why we're doing the older episodes. So you can see how things, you know, like a war zone, are done properly. But at the same time, I feel like there's a certain amount of levity that we owe the audience.
Well, this episode starts with some levity. We got Rom singing.
Yeah.
We got like 2 seconds of Rom in a holodeck just like belting it out, which was so like opposite of the entirety of the show. Made the layout of the episode weird because it had the longest cold open ever.
I mean, especially for the time in which this show aired, that was a significantly long cold open considering.
And it honestly was like a weird episode, like a weird opening for this episode, because all it did was set up the fact that Julian was going to have some recordings of Vic Fontaine. I was like, I don't think we need to see him getting those. Like, that's not an important thing. Like, honestly, the episode could have really started with the scene with Sisko staring at the names of the fallen.
I think the reason that more so that was there is so that you could see the difference. So you have someone like Rom being like, you know, the humor is super important, and I want to be, you know, doing singing and comedy and whatever. You have something like that, and you have, you know, he's picking up the CD basically, so you could take it to the front line. They're all like, oh yeah, happy go lucky, and it's like, this is life on the space station where everything's fine and safe, and you know, we're at war, but we still have our holodeck. And then he gets a line where he's like, why don't, you know, Vic Fontaine's like, why don't I come with you? And he's like, oh, where we're going, they don't have holodecks. Mm-hmm. You're just like, okay. And then you get there and it's literally worse than you can possibly imagine.
Exactly. No,
so they definitely needed it. It's just the way it was in there was just weird.
But I think, I think it serves it in the sense that it kind of gives you, again, that parallel to that rosy house on the hill that you know, if you're at home and you're safe and you're, you know, in your recliner, you're in a privileged position to make those kinds of jokes and to make those kinds of comments versus holy shit, you're in a living hell.
Well, there's two levels of that.
Away,
there was,
you know what I mean?
There was, you know, them in the holosuite.
Yep.
And then there was Cisco being like, oh, yeah, well, you know, I make a point to read every single name that comes through.
Right.
And then at the end of the episode where she's like, yeah, a lot of names. And he's like, they're not just names.
Yeah. So it gets...
And so you're just like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, Mr. I read all the names. It's like, oh, wait, crap, those are people.
No, because he
maybe I shouldn't be so like high up on my little floaty bat. I acknowledge all of the names.
Exactly. You know, it starts off where Cisco is having a very difficult time remembering all the names because they're all a blur now. But the episode ends with the fact that he's going to be in front of that window looking out in the space station, or the Defiant rather, for a very long time, counting off each and every one of those 1,738 lives that have just been killed in the last wave of attacks.
Well, yeah, because it's, you know, they started blurring together and they stopped meaning something. So, you know, he went back to the front line and had to realize again that it wasn't, you know, as easy as he was kind of romanticizing it in a way. And he had to kind of realize the consequences again. Absolutely.
And the great thing about this episode is that he makes the choice to stay, because, you know, through a obligation to duty that this base needs a captain, but also in a subconscious way to almost inoculate himself again with that taste of how bad war is, just to kind of give him that shot in the arm to remind him, yeah, this is costly. Everything comes at a cost. And even you were commenting, Meagan, about the fact that, you know, when they do hold the base and they do take out some of the Jem'Hadar, and even though they do suffer casualties, they hold the base, and then Worf says what?
He talks about how it's a great battle and how many songs will be sung about it.
Yeah,
which is like the most
victory.
It's a great victory, which is the most Klingon reaction ever, being just like,
songs will be sung about this.
Be like, this is a great battle. Like, their children can be proud of them. And it's just like the best, like, 2 seconds of Klingon
songs
ever.
Of this.
It's like the best 2 seconds of Klingon ever. And it's like, they got the Klingons right in 2 seconds, man. What are you doing with your life?
But it's so funny.
Of course, it was Worf, and it's hard for, like, anything with Michael Dorn is just going to be the strongest example.
But it's just all the time they spend in the makeup chairs for these things. And Michael Dorn had all of 2 scenes. All worth it, though. Made it all totally worth it.
I mean, one of the things you can say about this is we've never, we didn't get to see Worf down on there, because this episode was about disillusioning war, de-romanticizing it. And the fact of the matter is, you can never de-romanticize Worf and battle.
No, Klingons will never be over it.
Yeah.
It's just not
how their race goes. Worf will go down to that planet, take off his little ponytail strap, shake his hair loose, and just have a fucking crazy old time.
Well, and that's kind of like, you know, in First Contact when they're about to die, and they're all just like, we're screwed, and Worf's just like, no,
ramming speed.
Today is a good day to die. And they're just like, what the crap, man? He's like, this is gonna be good. He's like, we're done. This is it. This is how I go out. He'll be like,
songs will be sung about the Defiant.
He'll be like, and then Worf died. Worf died in the battle for Sector 001, and it was great. And they'll sing songs about it.
He took out a cube all by himself.
Oh yeah. Oh, totally worth it. And so he'd just be like, yeah. And everybody else would be like...
Meanwhile, Picard's like, nah, son, tomorrow.
He's like,
you can die tomorrow.
It's okay, I beamed you up. And he's just like, but I was...
It's cool, bro. It's like, cool. It's cool.
It's okay, there's more battles coming. He's like, all right, it's fine.
Your song will have another verse to it, okay?
But it's like every time Worf comes up against these, like there's... Yeah. I mean, First Contact alone has a million different points where Worf's just like, all right. Like, you're like, okay, Worf died. And he's like, no, I didn't.
Yeah.
I'm back.
Yeah, but I mean, and so you know, even backtracking from back from the end of the episode, I mean, you have a lot of great moments where, you know, back to Quark. You know, Quark is looking out.
Oh, Quark had some of the best lines.
Great.
Yeah, he literally was the sobering part of the audience, saying, you know, there is a cost to this. I know that you feel like you have to hold this base and get this communications array up, but look at what it's costing you. Look around. Don't you see what's going on? Don't you see the damage that this is
Well, it
caused?
was more so him talking to his nephew, trying to impress upon his nephew the reality of the situation. And his nephew, even at the end of the episode, didn't
Yeah, he didn't
really
get it.
understand.
Yeah. He still had it in
he
his mind.
lost
I'm
his-
fine. I'm
Well,
totally
I
fine.
mean, he
Yeah.
lost his leg, and he was still like, this was worth it. This was a great thing. And he asked Cisco, he's like, it was worth it, right? And Cisco's like,
Yeah, kid.
yeah.
Totally.
And so
I
he's
hope
like,
so.
he's happy, he's satisfied.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was kind of an interesting thing to me, is that they never he never lost the kind of starry-eyed opinion of everything.
Wait till the next episode.
Well,
I think they think
this is
part of
before
it.
the reality sets in. He was still like hopped up on some kind of.
Before the fucking phantom limb syndrome kicks in.
Well, this is.
not.
I think this is about Cisco becoming disillusioned, because we saw
Yes.
that in the beginning of the episode he was war weary, just because like, oh, how long is this gonna go on? Was
Yes.
kind of like the way that he was, and then like seeing kind of everything, because you could tell that his attitude from the beginning of the episode is like, we have to straighten our spines, we have to stand tall, and we cannot give in. And then this episode he sees that, oh wait, we got to do something. We can't lose our humanity in this, because then they will win. Like even if we get like even if we get like some of the
because they were
victory.
talking about the Houdini mines, and she was just like, it's so weird because we were talking about how these were the worst thing ever, and now that they're on our side, they're great.
Well, yeah, that guy. Well, who was the guy that it wasn't the Vargas? It was the other guy.
It was the engineer.
Not the engineer.
No, it was what's his name, Rambo.
Oh, yeah. The guy with the knife.
Yeah.
It was,
I don't remember that character's name. He's like, yeah, they seem a lot friendlier now.
Yeah, so I mean,
That was Reese.
Reese, yeah.
but there was just a lot of parallels
Robert
and a lot of.
Kilpatrick.
He was in something.
He was in a lot of different things. Robert Kilpatrick. Let's run his IMDb down. He's been in a lot. He was in, ladies and gentlemen, he was in Blackwater, Insecurity, Beyond the Shield, American Violence,
Nobody's seen any
Cops
of
and
those.
Robbers.
He was in Cops and Robbers.
NCIS New Orleans, Assassin
Wait,
X,
Cops and Robbers or Cops and Robinson?
NCIS Los Angeles. He was
Because
in
Cops and Robinsons was a gem of a movie.
He was in CSI. He was in The Zombinator. He was in Burn Notice. He was in Cold Case, CSI Miami. He was in The Confessional. He was in Chuck. He was in Terminator, The Sarah Connor Chronicles,
basically
Shark,
everything.
Las Vegas, Criminal Minds, 24.
But I think you're glazing over the fact, Greg. You're
And he was in
glazing over the
Minority
fact
Report as well.
that Chevy Chase did a brilliant movie called Cops and Robinsons.
Oh, yes, I remember that one.
Okay, where they had to like hold up in his house and pretend to be part of the family so they could stake out the neighbor.
Yes.
It's great.
Yes, I remember that vaguely.
It's glorious. Highly recommend.
On the list, folks who are listening, please watch
I recommend terrible movies, but they're all
And
amazing terrible.
Insert them into the comments below with your rating of Cops and Robinsons.
Have you seen it, John?
I have not seen it.
You're missing out.
Okay. Well, the other great Quark line was when he confronted Cisco about sending out Nog to scout the base. Like, on the one hand, Nog was the only guy that could do it, but on the other hand, Cisco was like just casually sending him out, because that's what a commander kind of has to do.
And he's an ensign. That's his
Yeah.
job. Go do scout.
And Quark basically called him, like, you wouldn't be sending Jake out.
His son.
Yeah, and then Cisco's only response was, Jake's not a Starfleet officer. It's like, not a great comeback, man.
And as the camera pushes in, he was right.
He's like, oh, that is kind of, it's a little bit shitty. Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
no, the dichotomy, is very interesting, because anyone who's watched the full expanse of this show, it's interesting because you have one father figure who was all about doing his duty for Starfleet, and a son who's far more of a journalist, photographer, pacifist, observer. Then you have Quark, who comes from a species of, I guess, profiteers, if you will, traders, merchants,
Businessmen.
business people, aliens, or what have you, and all they're about is what can they get, what can they profit, and yet they have, in this case, Quark's nephew, who chooses a life of service. So you have this interesting dichotomy.
Yeah, it's a very interesting kind of like an opposite.
Absolutely, and it comes back to, and it's funny because it actually sets up this whole table of the sins of the fathers revisiting upon their sons, because the next episode, if anyone who watches the following episodes, really does revisit upon Nog and Jake Sisko and the fact that because of Nog's injuries, and they have a great setup by Bashir here in which he says, yeah, I know we're in the future and I know we have artificial limbs, but yeah, that shot to the leg pretty much eviscerated a lot. So I don't even know
he's like, there's
what's left.
There's a lot of like nerve damage and muscle damage. He's like, so I don't know if
an artificial limb would work. So that basically sets up the reason why. Because I always wondered,
in the original watching, why he didn't have a peg leg. Spine.
True, but he didn't suffer a thermal burn. Like he
just saying.
No, but Worf, I remember that episode. Worf had some shit dropped on his back. Versus Nog got his shit shot off.
Shot by the Jem'Hadar.
Yeah, big difference. Totally big difference.
I'm just throwing it out there for some perspective.
Blunt force trauma versus a fiery evisceration.
Now that's a solid episode. One of y'all should have picked that one because that was good.
Why else are you here, Meagan? I mean, come on.
Look, I have to pick super happy episodes, okay?
Fine.
I have to pick the episode with the marvelous Okana, okay? I have to pick the episode where Captain Picard goes on holiday.
My next pick then will be him getting the replacement spine, okay?
Well, now it's been spoiled, so you can't pick it.
Well, let's swing it back around to Quark, because even though he talked
herding
a big
cats,
game,
John, herding cats.
He talked a big game about how vicious humans could be, and like when when you take away all their creature.
One of my favorite parts.
When you take away all their creature comforts, they'll become as mean and as vicious as any Klingons. You back him into a corner. But what did he do when he got backed into a corner? He was there. His nephew's life was
in his hands.
It was in his hands, and a Jem'Hadar appeared out of nowhere. He heard them coming. He turned and he shot. He didn't, surrender or try to talk it out. No, he shot first, asked questions never.
Yeah, he got the drop.
He pulled a Han Solo.
Yeah, he got the drop. He literally he listened, and part of me almost feels like had we had more animatronics in this era that they could afford, I guarantee you the ears would have done something. And he whips around and just blasts Jem'Hadar through his armor, kills the bastard. I mean, the callbacks and the bookends to this episode were really well done.
Yeah, no, it was a great moment where he was talking to his nephew and he was explaining humans to him, or as they call them, humans.
Humans.
He was explaining the humans to Nog, and he was talking about how they're great unless you put them in a pinch, and then you don't want to mess with them. And he's like, so all you've seen them is when they're happy. Mm-hmm. And he's like, you're sitting here dealing with them when they're happy and you don't understand. He's like, I don't want you to talk to these people. They've seen some shit. They will fuck you up. Like, you need to be aware of, the situation that you're in right now.
That's right.
And so it was kind of an interesting, he's, I think, kind of in a delicate way, he was trying to impress upon him the severity of the situation, and he just wasn't
getting it.
He wasn't really getting it.
No.
Which kind of makes you wonder, what kind of shit has Quark really seen? I mean, yeah, he was there during the Cardassian occupation.
Right.
And he was still a Ferengi about everything, but even as they said, like, he would sell medicine to the Bajorans basically at cost.
Yeah.
Which, for a Ferengi is the antithesis of who you, like, in that situation, you'd want to price gouge, and he didn't. So, then, he served as a ship's cook before that, but it just a matter.
We really did get the backstory on that, did we?
Not in this episode, but something tells me. I do believe once you get to show season 7, they really do start stretching their legs and really examining, who these people were before they got to the space station. So even before season 7, in fact. But
which I think that they just want to make it seem as though Quark was just a kind of regular Ferengi, just like cruising about through the stars. But there's a lot of indications throughout. Most of this that he's seen some dark stuff.
Absolutely.
But he still remains Quark. Like, Quark is not a fighter or a warrior in any way, shape, or form. He is what, he seems to be. He's a businessman.
He's a hustler.
He's a businessman. He's a hustler. He's a barkeep. He's a rogue.
That's right.
Like an actual rogue.
That's right.
Sorry, I'm reading about Quark's like life, and it's fascinating.
It's I think that
His mom was apparently super offensive, and she like would not choose food for him, and she talked to strangers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ferengi society.
she was a rebel. I like this gal already.
Ferengi society was very.
Oh, they have very
yeah.
warped views of women in Ferengi society.
I can only imagine. I can only imagine. But let's see. It was an interesting episode, also featuring Ezri Dax, who, was another host to the Dax symbiote, and just the interesting evolution to the Dax character. Jadzia was far and away, a different portrayal, and Ezri was. Had to basically take on the symbiote in a very emergency situation. So the way the character was played in such a way that was slightly more vulnerable, but still had a lot of the wisdom from the previous hosts, or rather from the previous hosts.
Well, yeah. Well, I think the difference between Jadzia and Ezri is that Jadzia went through all of the training and preparation that you're supposed to go through, and Ezri didn't.
Exactly. Yeah. It was literally like, she's dying, you're up, and open wide, and there's that. That's what that was. Very traumatic. Very, very traumatic. What else? Bashir. Bashir is always great. But at this point, by season 7, Bashir is like, yeah, I'm a doctor, but I'll cap the fuck out of somebody right now. Like the way he's like loading the rifle.
Yeah, his was like,
it's like,
they're just like, so you've done that before, and he's
like,
like, I've been around the block.
When I joined Starfleet, it was to save lives. Ooh.
I'm about to take some.
I'm about to take a whole lot right now.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a lot of characters in the Star Trek universe though that have had these like horrific dark pasts before coming on. Like, I mean, Tasha Yar had one of the darkest pasts of any of the characters. Like, hers was terrifying. They go to her home world at one point, and they're just like, "Oh my god!"
Like no wonder you who you are. You're so much nicer.
She was great. I might have to do it like season 1 or season 2 episodes.
Tasha Yar should have got her own series, honestly, or at least just more. I can never talk about Tasha Yar without feeling really
eternally bummed out.
Just
She was the best.
Yeah, I hated how she went out, because she was actually, if you look at the era of television, and this actually goes back with
she did also
DS9 too.
like, it sucks how she went out, but she did also get one of the best deaths.
Oh, no, absolutely. I'm just saying, in terms of this era of television, when you look at Tasha Yar and even Jadzia Dax, these were two very, very strong female supporting characters who I just don't think they were served as well in death as they were in life, in terms of really honoring them in death as they were in life. So I was like, come on. I was like, I really wanted just either more out of them or just more of like
Jadzia got jobbed like straight up by Gul Dukat. Like that there's no other way to call it. But of course he was possessed by a Pa Wraith at the time, so it was what else was she going to do other than just basically die?
I know.
Yeah, but I mean, Tasha Yar's character carried an echo throughout the rest of Next Generation.
True.
Like, she came up all the time. She was.
That's true.
Data remembered her very fondly and very often.
No, that's true. Yeah, you're right.
Like, I mean, they even brought her back to portray her
twin,
her clone.
Yeah.
Which was great. That was a fantastic arc. I'm just saying, like, it sucks, but they at least acknowledge, I think we fucked up.
Yeah.
You know?
I will always shed a tear for Tasha Yar and Jadzia Dax. Always. If we could, we would throw up with Sarah McLachlan. I will remember you.
I don't think we could get that passed without YouTube. Completely.
We did also
6 seconds. Go.
Yes, you have to also think about how the evolution of the Ferengi from the first time we see them to now, though.
Well,
like the first time we see the Ferengi is like, they've got those like lightning whips, and they're just like kind of feral,
Yeah.
They're very, again, shocked by Tasha Yar. They're like, why is she wearing clothes? What is she doing here? This is weird.
Yes.
And they're just like, what are you guys talking about? And they're like, this is weird.
Yes, it is.
Well, as Armin Sherman said that with the character of Quark, he wanted to undo a lot of the damage that he thought was done to the Ferengi by like their first appearance.
Their first appearance was not kind.
No.
at all.
No.
And so it is really cool to see, the differences in the characters. I think the rules of acquisition are great.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm sure somebody went through and did a list.
Yeah.
No, there is a list. Actually, I think there is a full book. Somebody actually wrote up the entirety of the rules of acquisition.
Which is great, because there's some gems.
Honestly, I mean, you can apply that to business on Earth. I mean, I'm not.
Oh, for sure.
Some of those principles, you put that side by side with 48 Laws of Power, and then you got a nice little beginning of a library right there.
Yeah, but the Ferengi are always a great kind of foil to Starfleet because the Ferengi are like supposedly stand for everything that Starfleet basically doesn't. They're hardcore capitalists, while as Starfleet and the Federation is super like space communism.
Yeah, they don't do money or anything.
And they're
They're also very pragmatic.
Yeah, they're
very pragmatic.
Pragmatic. They're all about greed. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's like even though as they say, it's just like we're far more flexible than the Federation. We'll run with anything. We don't start wars.
Yeah, they're very adaptable.
But it's very interesting because you would think they'd be for war because war brings money, brings profit.
I think rule of acquisition, as I said, number 34, war is good for profit. But then Rule 30. Well, no. 30. That's 35.
Right.
34 is peace is good for profit.
Yep.
Basically, what they're saying is just like all times are good for profit.
Yeah.
Look, they don't discriminate.
So it's variant. I mean, they are supreme pragmatists that I feel like, in many ways, Starfleet definitely, at least over the course of DS9, learned from, because I feel like by this point in Starfleet, they had to learn a little bit more about being pragmatists than idealists.
Well, yeah, eventually Sisko quotes the rules of acquisition to Nog. And there's a great moment. It's like he just starts learning them because he's just like, yeah, there is a little bit of something to this.
Yeah, I mean, it's valuable. It keeps Starfleet from, especially when Starfleet is that far out in the fringes of space, from kind of losing its shit a little bit. I'm like, yeah, we're idealists. Yeah, but you're also in the wild, wild west. So how about you taper that shit back a bit?
That's kind of how their very limited scope and inability to act was what led to the formation of the Maquis.
There you go.
And how all of that came about. And
I was going to pick that episode too. that was my other episode when Sisko has to confront his best friend who became Maquis. Which I was thinking about picking it because I know the previous round we had watched Voyager and how just so easy it was for Starfleet and the Maquis to all of a sudden be working together.
I don't know if it was easy. I think it was 2 seasons of people hating each other before that happened.
But if you base it off of how much beef there was from DS9, you would think this is going to be going on for a lot longer. But it didn't.
Desperate times.
Exactly. So, but yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm almost positive. Yeah. Quick. I'm almost positive. There's at least about 5 or 6 super lighthearted episodes. Like remember when Sisko and Jake went sailing under a Solar Sailor space boat? That was a light episode. Nothing terrible happened there except they could have been sucked into the vacuum of space. But that's as dark as you got.
Well, there was also the Magnificent Ferengi. That's the one where they take the Vorta. They're going to trade this Vorta that Sisko and the rest of them had taken prisoner for. I think it was Moogie. That's Rom and Quark's mom.
Right.
Was taken prisoner by
Moogie.
Yeah.
All right.
By the Dominion. Yeah. And Iggy Pop plays the Vorta that comes to negotiate.
That's right.
It's an interesting episode.
That's right.
Because like
Iggy Pop, questionably an alien.
Yeah, I mean, so Meagan, see, there aren't, it's not entirely grimdark.
I'm not saying that the entire thing is grimdark. I'm just saying that the only episode you pick are grimdark. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I'm just saying some of the best episodes are the grimdark episodes that they examine war and its effects
there's a great episode of The Next Generation where Captain Picard and Wesley are going off to take Wesley off to go to the academy, and their shuttle crashes, and Wesley has to get them water and save the day.
Yeah,
And
I
it's
remember
super grim dark, and it's really good.
Yeah, I remember that.
And nobody dies.
Well,
Okay.
because you have two of your principals. They're not going to.
They got plot.
It has no consequence.
But you think, I mean, things get pretty dark for
Yes.
Picard, okay?
Yes, it does.
Wesley's
Yes, it does.
intelligence is like questioned.
And challenged. Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
Well, I can say this episode, Cisco's life got into heavy danger. You see him like Jem'Hadar storming the barricades, and then Cisco is just like swinging the rifle around like a club. It's just like, can't shoot you right now, so I'm just gonna beat you to death with this gun.
Yeah, it gets to a desperate point during this battle where literally people are just. You're too close to fire, so now you're just beating people with a bunch of rifles.
And he eventually gets knocked down after saving Dr. Bashir's life.
Yep.
And then he blacks out with a Jem'Hadar about ready to take aim. You know, I don't know who killed that Jem'Hadar that was about ready to take him out. Whether it was going to be whether it was Kilpatrick or it was Bashir returning the favor.
The engineer died.
Well, yeah,
He saving
Esri. Well, he saved her, and then he was rushing over, and he got shot.
Yep. Oops. Something tells me though that Reese has collected those capsules, the
Ketracel White,
the Ketracel White capsules, the tubes from each and every one of those fuckers on the battlefield.
Nah, he left it all behind.
Well, he left his knife behind.
Yeah, the knife. He dropped the knife, and symbolically that knife. Something tells me someone else will be picking up that knife. If I feel like if you go back to Deep Space Nine and go back to that outpost, someone else has that knife now. Even though the war is probably like long over, but
well, just the other great thing about this episode is the absolute senselessness of all of this. So they're holding this position on a planet or some sort of planetoid that is not even important enough to have a name. It has a designation. It's AR558.
yes,
And they have this Dominion communications relay, which could or could not.
They don't know how it works. They don't know what it's relaying. They don't know anything about it. But
they just know it's
keeping it.
theirs. So we have it.
Just in case.
Yeah, it's pretty much that we know that the Dominion wants it, so we should have it.
Basically.
Which we're not. They don't know what in any way, shape, or form it does, and it could be not at all important. And yeah, the Jem'Hadar keep on attacking it, but this is just a contested zone. They could just be attacking it, pretty much because.
Yeah.
And it's not like they have a dearth of Jem'Hadar. They literally grow them in tubes.
Yeah.
Which in itself is messed up.
And they grow them with drug addictions.
So
it
that
reminds
they're
me
loyal.
of the first episode of Next Generation, where Q is taking him through putting Captain Picard and the rest of the crew on trial for mankind, and he goes through the history, and at one point I can't remember which era it was in, but there was an era where everybody was all hopped up on drugs and was like,
yes,
it's a great episode, also super dark, John, if you're interested. It's the second episode.
Definitely first half of the season, or the first half of the first season.
No, because the Encounter at Farpoint was the first one, and that's where the alien was.
All right, I just want to point out we don't love DS9 just because of its dark episodes.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Are you positive?
Yes,
Absolutely.
100% positive.
Absolutely.
Because I don't believe you.
No.
We just happen to love a lot of its much darker episodes. Like they just hit it the
I don't love it
harder.
because it's dark, but the fact that it's dark doesn't make me love it any less.
No, we love it.
Damn
No,
straight.
we love it. We love it
just,
because we love it because the premise of the franchise is space, the final frontier. This literally looks at a space station on the frontier, trying to keep the peace, and what happens with witnessing how hard it is to keep said peace. That's why we love DS9 so much, because it actually shows you, seek new life in new civilizations, boldly go.
Or just squat somewhere really inconvenient and watch people die.
But holding this shit down is not easy at all.
Yeah, it's easy to be a space tourist, but what if you have to live there?
Yeah. Essentially, it's very easy to be a space tourist, but what happens when you have to live there? I mean, DS9 was one of the only shows in the franchise that really asked that question: what happens when you can't just walk away from your problems?
That's the problem.
as solely a space station.
No, but that's the thing. You have the original series, the animated series, and Next Generation.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, they did talk about that, but not really. But every other show, like Voyager, Deep Space Nine, now just like stupid Discovery, they're all like, yeah, but it's going to be dark. It's the dark side that you don't hear about and the dark stuff.
Except for
it's super
DS9
dark.
actually succeeds. Okay,
Yeah.
can we
Well,
agree
yeah,
to
because
that?
it's actually good.
Yeah, no, but
No, it's super good. It's super good.
Well, it actually pulls in all those parallels from real life and from day-to-day life and reality. That's what makes it. That's what makes it.
Not garbage.
That's what makes it work. In the
A
sense that
quality piece of television.
it reminds you of the
that you can have stories about war and still not
living cost
hate the show.
and about the sacrifice.
That your characters can go around and kill a bunch of people and still be like,
And still be-
believable. You can still feel for them.
Still be Starfleet.
You can still support them. They can still question their morals and, stay true to their Starfleet roots.
Well, like Bashir is like, when I joined Starfleet, it was to save lives. And that's
Well, I like how they don't have him, like, they don't have him dwell on that or have a dramatic speech. It's like, what else does he need to say in that moment?
That's it.
Like, yeah. It's like, I joined Starfleet to save lives. Like,
Yeah. Well, even you see Reese in the background, just like, all right, bro. It's like, okay.
He's out there to save lives, man.
yeah.
He didn't say how.
Yeah, namely ours right now.
Yes.
I'm just saying, there's a way that this stuff can be done successfully, and the show definitely does it. Especially
in a
when
very
compared
tight,
to
self-contained
other
way.
shows, which fail miserably.
I would be very interested to see how. I mean, I think DS9 was probably as close as you could have ever gotten to being serialized in terms of really following an arc of a war, because there weren't too many other iterations of Star Trek that really got away with showing an overarching war that carried on different elements throughout a season. So this was particularly interesting.
All right, well.
So I guess the overall kind of closing thoughts that we had on this episode, Greg.
my overall closing thoughts
Did you
is
just
him? Is Meagan doesn't want any more grimdark. She
I'm just saying, maybe it's time we go and save some whales.
Space whales, yes.
They're not space whales. They're Earth whales.
But we did meet some space whales
We
in
did.
Discovery. Best episode had a whale in it.
We did.
A space whale.
We did. We did. We should go back to the era of the mobsters and see if we can save Al Capone. Let's do that.
Oh, there's some great mobster episodes.
Let's get trapped. Let's get trapped in the holodeck, Megan. Come on.
It's an episode where Moriarty takes over the Enterprise because they told the computer to make an opponent worthy of Data.
There you go.
There's some great stuff there.
Let's bring that back. Let's bring that back because war is heavy, and when Starfleet does war, and it's done via DS9, and you have Cisco who he will not let happen.
There's
again
a great
what happened
episode
to
where
his
Picard
wife,
gets stuck
so.
in an elevator with small children.
See, there you go. Done.
Well, that's Patrick Stewart. Just put him in a situation and he will be compulsively watchable.
True. I mean, have you seen him with puppies? I mean, it's
Dude rescues dogs.
you can-
He
you-
rehabilitates pit bulls, and it's the best thing ever.
You can rip that and just put it on TV right now and just say, Picard and Puppies, new show coming this fall, and that's it. And then as far as captains go, Cisco will not make the same mistake twice. It's like, no, I'm gonna gut them some bitches before they can even come close to me and mine. Simple as that.
What about you, John? How do you feel about this episode?
I actually love this episode. It's probably my third favorite behind Duet and In the Pale Moonlight.
Oof. Yeah.
All the deep, dark, depressing episodes.
Well, In the Pale Moonlight isn't
do
deep.
you like any happy episodes?
I like Trials and Tribulations, yes. But In the Pale Moonlight is not like a depressing episode. It is like morally gray and dark, and it's a great Garrick episode, which, God, you gotta love a good Garrick episode.
True. True.
Yeah.
Megan, thoughts?
It was solid.
Full stop.
Yeah. I feel like we almost had to kind of search for stuff to say just because, it's solid delivery, solid episode. There's not a whole lot
You can
bad
say.
about it.
Yeah.
So it was good. It's not one of my favorite episodes.
What's your favorite episode of DS9 then?
We've talked about it a lot.
Trials and Tribulations.
Yeah.
Okay.
That admittedly is a really fun episode. So we do endorse that you watch Trials and Tribulations.
Yes.
If for no other reason than like the technology that they ended up using for it.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah,
and when we
it's
said
great.
technology, just how they were able to reuse the film from the original episode
And you get one of my
splice
all-time
in
favorite
the new
lines.
DS9 cast.
We don't like to talk about it.
Because they also have to deal with a very harsh retcon as to what exactly happened to the evolution of the Klingons.
we
don't like to talk about it.
We don't talk about it with outsiders.
Which I think was a brilliant way to write that.
Yeah.
Because there's no way you can do that episode and not address it. But at the
Yeah.
same time, having Worf show up at the end and having them be like,
You don't look like.
you
Yeah.
gonna
I
explain
noticed
this?
something weird.
I think the overall best part of that episode, now we're just talking about a different episode, was the part where Bashir is debating whether or not he needs to bang his own grandmother.
Oh, that's right. Because
I like how he's going through and debating all of it, and O'Brien just like, Julian, shut up.
shut the hell up.
I think my
if
favorite-
I do it, will it prevent me from being born? Motherfuckers, get off of it.
My favorite part is when Kirk gets buried by the tribbles and the random tribbles just keep coming out randomly and hitting him.
Boink.
They tied that back into the episode where they were up there in the
Yeah.
vat of tribbles being like, and just chucking them.
Yes.
There's some just great little tie togethers there.
Yeah. It was a beautiful. That was a beautifully done callback.
Yeah.
Very well done.
But yeah,
But enough about that. So I think that wraps us
next
up.
week is my turn.
Yes.
What are you gonna bring?
It's gonna be a surprise.
We're gonna surprise. Can we guess which series it's gonna be from?
Well, you can probably guess which series it's gonna be from.
Space boat. Space yacht.
It's not gonna be the Captain's Yacht. That only shows up in the movie.
Okay.
Okay. So I think that is wraps us up for this week. We'll see you guys next time.